Hello, this is Terry, and welcome to another episode of the Animation Industry Podcast. This chat includes everything you ever wanted to know about rotoscoping, since I'm chatting with a super experienced independent rotoscoper from the UK named Flora Martyr. If you haven't seen her work, which is aired on the Sky Arts channel and at various festivals, including the Lancashire Encounter Festival and the Cardiff Animation Festival, you definitely should. It is simply beautiful. In our chat, she shares what inspired her to get into rotoscoping, her complete process from start to finish, when rotoscoping is the best type of animation to use, and some inspirational examples from mainstream films that every aspiring rotoscoper should check out. But before we jump right in, I have a sponsored message to share with you, and it comes from my friends over at Hue HD, who offer an all-in-one starter kit for kids around 7 to 13 years old, or really any beginner when it comes to animation. Their kit includes an easy and fun way to learn key animation techniques, including claymation, lip-syncing, and rotoscoping. The kit includes a colorful Hue HD camera with a bendy gooseneck, built-in microphone, and manual focus. It also includes their easy-to-use animation software, which has some great features such as onion skinning and time-lapse, and kids can even record their own voices to bring their animations to life. Also part of the kit is the Hue Book of Animation, which takes you step-by-step through how to create your own stop-motion videos and learn the principles of animation like squash and stretch. Plus, you can download free sound effects, a storyboard template, and backgrounds to give your videos that added magic. And if you want more info about this kit, you can check out the Hue website or order one off Amazon, and I've included links to both of these places in the description of this chat. One more thing, Hue has created a free little downloadable package for any listener of this podcast. And in that package, they've included a storyboard template, a sample background for your next claymation, a short instructional video on how to squash and stretch a simple character with clay to make it bounce, and even a super cute printable phenakistoscope of a rat going into a hole. And a phenakistoscope, if you're not familiar, is one of those little circle things with slits in it that when you put it on a stick and spin it in a mirror, you'll see the animation come to life right before your eyes. So if you know someone interested in trying out claymation, or you want to yourself, definitely check out this free downloadable package. The link is in the description of this podcast. Now let's jump into the chat. Hi, Flora. Thank you so much for coming on this chat during these interesting quarantine times. What's going on with you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Doing lots of animating, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the perfect time to be animating. You're like stuck at home. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So have you been doing anything interesting during the pandemic?
Yeah,
can share or anything that you learned?
Yeah, kind of at the start when it was more kind of everyone needs to stay indoors, kind of still animating. Well, I worked on a film in that time, which got into a film festival, or two actually. And then lots of like sewing as well, just because that was kind of like a thing, another creative thing to do.
Nice. Well, congrats on the film festival. So
Thank you.
I have never talked to somebody who does rotoscoping as like their thing or professionally or anything before. And I'm so interested because I feel like I have a very rudimentary understanding of rotoscoping, that it's you're like tracing on top of live action. But I want to like dig in and figure out all the ins and outs and your inspiration, everything. So let's roll back a little bit and figure out where this journey began for you, because I talked to a lot of people who the journey was for animation and then they didn't end up rotoscoping, but you're still doing animation. So I want to know how you swam into the rotoscoping route.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird one, I suppose. Yeah, because I never have actually trained in animation, which is probably perhaps why I moved on to rotoscoping. So like, well, I sort of started it in 2011, but it kind of like goes back further. So like as a kid, I was always doing art or creative things, but I never sort of knew which direction I wanted to take it, apart from just do something creative when I was older, because that's all what I knew or what I was good at, and just that's the kind of thing I wanted to do. And then that kind of moved to doing, like, from finished school and then into college to do A levels, and obviously did art but also film studies, and that was kind of when I got really into film and just moving image. And I just I don't know, I sort of at the same time, along with writing scripts, I started doing like very basic stop motion. So there's your little stop motion thing. But it kind of like probably later than a lot of other animation people, so maybe around like 16 or 17, because like before then it was more like art in terms of like visual, like just flat art, like painting or drawing and stuff. And then like I suppose it's really hard to remember, but I suppose like from that I did like when I finished the A levels, I did an art foundation course, which is usually like in the UK what a lot of people do before going to uni. So it's just like a 1 year course where you get to do loads of different art kind of stuff. And then in that I made like for my final piece an animated documentary. It was really, really rubbish, but I think it kind of like made me in like animation. And that was about the differences between Arial typeface and Helvetica.
Oh,
Just like
wow.
really weird, geeky kind of thing.
That's really neat. So you know all about font types. But so this was a rotoscope documentary?
No, this was just like a thing I did on Flash, but like I still wanted to, I think that would kind of set me up for animation. And then after that, I went to university and I finally decided to do film production because I thought that I could learn a lot in that and use the equipment and things. I thought that would teach me most skills because I didn't really have much film skills, but I knew I liked it. And I thought that I could use animation in that. And then like in second year, that gave you more options to do more experimental stuff and music videos and things. And that's like what I kind of got more into rather than like the more traditional film approach. And then I wanted to do an animation for one of the modules, which again was a music video. And I think one of my lecturers advised me to watch Waking Life and the film called Snack and Drink, which both are rotoscope films. One's a short and one's a feature. And then obviously I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then I just did a couple of rotoscope tests. I didn't even have a tablet, a Wacom tablet or anything. Then I just did it with like my mouse and my finger, but I knew that I really liked it. And then after that, I bought the tablet because I was like, this is going to take ages if I try to do the film like this.
Wait, so how many frames did you complete by mouse rotoscoping?
I think it was like a 30-second.
Oh my gosh.
I still got like the clip on YouTube somewhere.
Oh my goodness, that's like 1,000. I don't know. I can't.
I think I was doing it in 12 though, so not as bad, but still.
Wow, but still. So I really love your journey because it sounds like you were really trying to experiment different things and kind of found your path through that. And then you ended up in rotoscoping, which is really cool. So you tried other forms of animation and filmmaking. What is it about rotoscoping that gives you like energy?
I'm not sure really. I don't know, I still like appreciate other art forms to look at and obviously photography to do as well. But I don't know, I think because I don't really like cartoons or the kind of kids animation stuff, and this one was quite realistic, and I've always liked doing realistic things even when I was doing more art stuff when I was younger as well. So I think this kind of gave me that thing which was really quite creative but also realistic at the same time, and you can also kind of do what you want with it as well. So it was just kind of like a massive thing which kind of amalgamated a lot of things which I enjoy doing.
Nice. I'm curious. So like I use Toon Boom to 2D animate. What do you use to rotoscope?
I use TV Paint, but I used to use Flash.
Oh wow. So you just load in the video that you want to rotoscope and just go to town.
Yeah, basically. So I usually film it, or at the moment I've just been using stock footage because then I don't have to be in every single clip that I do because it's just annoying otherwise. And then I'll just take that into Premiere and then just edit it like you would do when you're editing a film, and then export the bits, but you can usually export it in a bit lower quality as well. And then because then it makes the animation program run.
Nice. You mentioned a couple inspirational films for you for rotoscoping. Can you like mention a couple that are very inspirational for you now, or kind of your the ultimate project you think would be amazing to rotoscope?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I'll start with some influences and then I'll talk about what I might want to do. But as I said, Waking Life, which is a Richard Linklater film, I think it was 2002. And that is, I think, my all-time favorite film. And that's just such an inspirational animation because it uses so many different techniques, and each kind of scene is different to the previous one. So they use so many different rotoscope techniques within this one film, and it's just such like a visual feast. So that's a terrible saying, but I don't really know how else to describe it. And then a documentary which is rotoscoped, well, mainly rotoscoped, and kind of more towards the end, it uses more like real people things. Yeah, called Tower, and that was 2016 film directed by Keith Maitland.
Is it Tower?
Yeah, just Tower, not the Tower. Yeah. And that's about a university shooting in, I think it's University of Texas, I think. Yeah, I should really know this. But that's just a brilliant way that rotoscoping is used in a way which isn't like a kind of a fun film, but I think it is great that they've used it in that film because it kind of, I suppose it makes like a really harrowing subject matter like easier to watch, I suppose. And plus they didn't have lots of footage at the time because I think the incident happened in the 60s and they didn't have cameras like everybody does at the moment. So that's obviously where the animation came in to kind of fill in the blanks of what the people are talking about in the interviews.
Yeah, I like what you just said about it's kind of making it easier to digest like a tough subject without making it like too cartoony or unrealistic. I think that actually, to me, instantly, I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense for that to be rotoscope. That's like the perfect example. Is there like when you're thinking about what you want to do, is you mentioned a documentary and a film. Is there something that you would have as the ultimate project for you to rotoscope that you see as like the perfect thing for rotoscoping?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to one day to do a feature film, and that probably would be a documentary, I think, or maybe like a kind of surreal drama or something, just something which is kind of real but not real, I think. But yeah, that's definitely kind of what I'm aiming for. Yeah.
Is there, we're kind of talking about what works with rotoscoping. Is there like an ultimate format that it's like rotoscoping works best to tell this type of story? I mean, you like, I don't think it's so appropriate for like a kids TV show, for instance.
Yeah.
Right? That wouldn't make entirely sense. But like you gave a good example with the Tower movie. Is there like a format where it's like tried and true rotoscoping works for it, storytelling wise?
Yeah, definitely. Things which are, I suppose, cross between human stories and something where it does venture out of that into something more surreal or fantasy driven. And there's a really good rotoscope series on Prime at the moment called Undone. And that's like an 8-part miniseries. And that is about a woman who gets in, I'm not going to obviously spoil it, but she gets in a car accident that's like in the first 5 minutes or in the trailer anyway, so that's not a spoiler. And it's about like kind of how she deals with that, along with like whether it's like mental illness or whether it's her memory, and it kind of flips between the real and the not real. And I think that's just, that series for me is kind of like where rotoscoping has, like, that's kind of what I am aiming for, I suppose, kind of just where rotoscoping is like, I think it's necessary for that show, really.
Nice. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but I'm just curious, like, so within animation, there's different niches like anime and like Western style and stuff like that. In rotoscope, I know rotoscoping is a niche itself, but in rotoscoping, are there different identifiable niches that exist within it?
I'm not too sure. I mean, like on Instagram, you see some stuff which is I don't know, in my head, I kind of have it as the Instagram style, but
Oh
that's
yeah.
probably just, I don't know, it's just when people seem to do it for lots of like just dancing videos and
Ah,
that kind of thing, whether they just do it all animated or whether they kind of add bits to
you mean those
people.
dancing videos where some like a light will go around the person's body and then they'll
Yeah,
flash
yeah,
into an animation?
yeah, and then I don't know. I suppose like then more indie kind of stuff,
Yeah.
or more experimental. But yeah, I don't really know any kind of like. I don't think it has genres within itself. Really, just lots of different styles.
Nice. I'm wondering, like I know how much work animation takes. Is rotoscoping, would you, because you've tried both, is it more or less work or different work, I guess, when you're, tracing over a live image versus like creating the movement yourself?
I'd say it's kind of, well, yeah, as you said, it's different work, but I think it is quite labor intensive in terms of, suppose with animation, you can't really, like a traditional animation, you can do a walk cycle, whereas in rotoscope, well, you probably could make a walk cycle, but it'd be probably a bit harder perhaps to make it so it joins together nicely at the
Oh yeah,
cycle.
because you're literally animating everything. Like there's
Yeah,
no shortcuts. And if you take a shortcut, it might break the illusion, I guess.
yeah, I suppose so. I guess it depends what kind of effect you want to create, but yeah, it's just there's quite a lot of drawing. Although
Yeah.
I kind of, when a character's just sitting still, I kind of have a few shortcuts. So I just draw them, say, 5 times instead of, say, I don't know, 80 or 90 times, and then just repeat those frames because I still like everything to, as like all my work to have quite a boil to it because
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
like it when it looks too smooth. So that kind of like solves that problem. So you don't have to, otherwise there's no point drawing something if it's just a still image that many times when it's just the same shot like someone's head. So you might, yeah, you can just loop it. You can loop some bits, but
That makes
yeah, that's
sense.
what
That
it's
makes
doing.
sense. I want to talk more about your process, but I have maybe some a little bit weird questions for you.
Okay.
So, rotoscoping, I see, doesn't get a lot of appreciation on sites like Reddit and social media sometimes. What do you versus like other forms of animation? What do you think of this or say to this when you see those comments? If you see those comments,
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time on Reddit. Maybe I should, or maybe I shouldn't. I'm
maybe.
not sure. Well, people like that, I just think they should stay more open-minded. I
Yeah.
mean, like I'd say people who try to pass it off as traditional animation, then I wouldn't really be in agreement with that. Um, but I don't think it should be discounted as a form of animation. Just, I think there's like a lot going for it in terms of it's like it as an art form, and I don't like, obviously it's different from other animation. Like I don't discount cartoons just because I don't like them. I can still appreciate it and appreciate the work that goes into it and how it might have an effect on people watching it. And I feel like with rotoscoping, people could, I don't know, maybe do the same for that. Like it's still a series of still images giving the illusion of movement. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's animation.
Fair enough. Have you ever had to deal with that in real life? Like if you're at a animation networking thing or something and you're like, hey, I'm in rotoscoping. Do you have to explain yourself or is it like, oh, cool?
It's a bit of both sometimes. Like sometimes I feel I have to justify myself. I suppose it depends who I'm talking to. When some people seem quite like more intrigued about it because like it is a quite niche thing within the industry, whatever that means. But like maybe like I feel a bit more not paranoid, but feel like I have to explain myself because I know that it has a kind of a, not a bad thing surrounding it, but you know, it's like kind of looked down upon in a way. So sometimes I might feel I have to explain myself, even though I might not have to, but I think sometimes I actually do, because I have had some comments and stuff like, oh, you won't get far in the animation industry if
Oh,
you don't have
dang.
cartoons. So yeah.
Well, yeah, that's tough. If somebody said it to me, I'd be like, bye.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. So well, I love your work and I think it's beautiful. And I'm really happy we're talking because I am not too aware of what goes into rotoscoping, even though I'm an animator myself. So let's talk about your whole process. Like, can you take me through the steps of like just what you do to finish something? Like, from my imagination, I would assume you find a video clip you like from like YouTube or something, and you're like, okay, here's a person doing an action. Then you load it up into TV Paint, and then you just start drawing on top of it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Take
basically.
me through. Take me through when you have like a
Yeah.
concept.
Well, luckily, as I said, yeah, so I did my degree in film, which, so I have all the know-how and knowledge of actually filming things. So I usually like to film things myself, especially if it's, say, like a short film I'm working on or something, because otherwise, like, obviously because of copyright and stuff, I just like to own all the clips that I do. But if it's like just a test clip, just, which I do a lot of, to kind of test out different styles and techniques, then at the moment I'm using clips from a stock footage site called Pexels, and that's a really good one. It has like a really diverse range of imagery, and that's all free to use as well. So yeah, and then I'll load it into TV Paint. I did used to use Flash, so you can use Flash as well, or now it's called Animator, isn't it? But anyway, the Adobe thing. But TV Paint just has like loads of brushes, and I just think it's really realistic. And then, yeah, so then I usually start with drawing the outlines. Maybe that's probably the same within normal animation as well. But I kind of do like, say if it's a t-shirt and that's all going to be blue, then I'll just draw like the silhouette of the t-shirt and then color it, because otherwise, like if you draw the creases in it, then when you do the fill, because sometimes it doesn't like go right up to the edges or anything, then you have to go around it again loads. But then after I've done the first outlines and the first kind of pass of color, then I will draw like another set of not outlines, but like inlines over the top, like the creases on the shirt and stuff.
That's a good tip. I'm gonna start. I always just color everything at the end, and it's a nightmare if you have like you said, creases or anything. So I'm gonna start doing that.
I only started doing that, like, I'm just looking at my diary thing. Yeah, just like either last week or the week before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Why haven't I just done this? So yeah, everyone should do it like that. It just takes a lot quicker. And then I suppose once you've drawn the outlines and the colour, then the other outlines, then I don't know, my stuff is usually experimental and quite mixed media. So the backgrounds, I guess it depends what project. Then the background anyway would usually come last. I've never been a person to do the background beforehand. I don't know if other people do that.
I mean, how we're taught in school is do the backgrounds first, because then your character is interacting on the plane of things and how the construction of the background is. So that's interesting to me as well.
It depends, like, kind of what thing it is. So say if the character does have to interact with a prop or something, then maybe that bit will be done earlier as well. But I usually kind of, I think do the background at the end. Just, I don't know, it works out better for me like that. Probably because I have the film reference as well for where the backgrounds will go at least. Obviously, like with the backgrounds, I won't draw it kind of, like sometimes I've just filmed stuff in a studio and then you can just kind of, as long as you have the basic shapes there, you can basically put in whatever you want for the background. But then sometimes I just do really weird experimental stuff, like you might have seen on my showreel, just like stuff which kind of mixes in my experimental film as well as my rotoscoping, because I kind of see it more as like an art form rather than like animation. Like I call myself a moving image artist because that fits in like most of what I do, I think.
An MIA. I like it. So, how do you make decisions on what lines to actually draw? Like when I watch rotoscoping, like say the face turns, like I don't know if I'm gonna draw like the cheekbones or just the basic nose. Like I don't even know what to draw. The nose, like the outline or just the nostrils. Like how do you make these decisions when you have to make them like consistently over any action the person's doing? Like if their face turns, I guess I'm trying to imply that, you could make so many decisions on what to actually draw during that period of time, but you have to make it look consistent. So I don't know. How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, so I usually draw it depends which one, like what project I'm working on, because most of my things are doing like a slightly different style. But I think like these days, like I've been doing it for years and years, so I kind of have a sort of set standard thing. So obviously it's always the eyes, and then like the line above the eyes, and then like the line below the eyes, and the bag kind of thing if they have that, and then the nose, and then sometimes like I will never do like two sides of the nose, like where it goes up. I always do one where it has more of the shadow on, and then
Ah,
I'll do nostrils and the lips, and then sometimes like when it's more like the lines like the face where you smile, and then always the what's it called, chin, yeah.
the
And
chin.
then when they turn, then I always do like the kind of jawline, but I won't really do a line for the cheekbones unless it's like a really kind of distinct thing. And then in the ears, I usually do a few lines as well. Like it depends on the person who I'm rotoscoping, and then try and like put the lines to make it so it looks like them, but kind of like the minimum in a way, so it doesn't overdo it as well.
Nice.
I think, yeah, that's usually the standard.
So I guess the process is first you have the idea, and then you go out and film yourself or find stock footage, and then you load that up into TV Paint, and then you do the basic shapes, color them in, then do details, and
Yep.
and then and then it's just done. Is there any like extra programs or anything that you use that
Um,
to finish it up?
yeah, sometimes I'll use After Effects to give like a background blur or any other extra effects. Say if I need to add rain or the standard kind of After Effectsy stuff, and then I usually edit the rest of it in Premiere. Yeah, because I usually like take it out of there, then put it into TV Paint. Then after that, export it as a PNG, and then import that sequence into Premiere. And then you have to then stretch it out to the right frame rate so it matches the clip underneath. And then I'll like delete all the normal clips and then put in all the backgrounds and kind of composite it like that.
Nice. Sounds pretty good. Are there really tough things to get right in rotoscoping that somebody like me might not know about? Like, for instance, you mentioned the ears. That already sounds like a nightmare to me to try to animate. But are there certain movements or I don't know, are there certain things that are always like super tough to do that maybe somebody might not appreciate when they see it?
Yeah, I guess I just goes with all animation. But I suppose the things which need to be right are mainly the bits when you film it. In terms of like if people are wearing say dark clothes like black trousers or something, that's a nightmare because you can't see any of the creases or anything. So I always get my actors to wear like neutral colors, like a blue or red or something. Or if it's too bright as well, then that obviously overexposes it and it blows it all out. So again, you can't really see the creases or shadows or anything.
That's a really
Um,
good tip.
yeah, I've kind of learned that the hard way. Also, like a wide aperture, so everything's in focus. Because say if they're walking and they're walking towards you, then the back foot will be blurred, and then it'll be harder to animate.
Oh yeah.
Also, like a smooth kind of frame rate. So they like when I filmed clips on my phone or on webcam or something, obviously it's of worse quality than filming it on a DSLR or like another good camera, which some of my friends use. So otherwise, like say they're doing that, it's bad for the people listening, but you can see that otherwise like you have a hand blur or something and they're kind of hard to animate as well. But I think because I've done it so much, like I can kind of, especially if I'm like drawing it of me, then I know what my hands look like. I can kind of easily fill in the bits which might be too blurred. But yeah, if you kind of get like those things right in filming, then it makes the job for the animators a lot easier. And like, everything should be like really well lit as well. So obviously like not too bright, nothing too much in shadow. So you have a quite neutral kind of light over everything.
Gosh, that all sounds, those are some great tips, especially the blurry one. I didn't even think about that, but if you're drawing a frame that's just like there's a, I can't even think of a smear frame, then what do you do? Like, how do you make that choice? I was just wondering randomly, do you get to kind of know a person's body by the time you're done animating them, like their hands and their face and everything? Like how, like, do you have a sense of just what they are after you're done animating because you've drawn them so many times?
Yeah, definitely. I think you kind of do get used to it, and say if they do turn their head and it is a bit blurry, or you can kind of know where the nose is or how you can draw it at that point because you've kind of drawn them a lot before, so you can, or even look back on the other shots and be like, oh, so that bit should be like that, say if some other bits are a bit tougher.
What is so I'm trying to think, like, what are you striving? Is there like a certain technique or craft or like perfectionism attitude you're kind of striving for in your rotoscoping? Like, how do you get better at rotoscoping over time?
I think just, well, what I've done is just kept pushing myself. So like the stuff I did back in 2011 when I started out, they were just really not bad, well, kind of bad, I suppose. But I've always been like, I suppose each piece I want to try and develop on in my next piece, or if it's not better, then it's different. So like, say, I always try and push myself out of my comfort zone, or if I notice I'm doing too, unless it's like on a film, which obviously I have to do all in the same style, but if on the test clips that I do in between projects, if I notice that they get too samey, then I'll be like, no, I now need to do it in a different style or in a different way to test out something new, so I can keep pushing myself in different directions. Like I don't want to get it like stale or still or anything. And if I like each film I do as well, I want that to be, I suppose, a development from the last one, and each one to be better, and look at what I did in that one to be like, oh, that didn't really work that well, and then not do that in the next project. So
what can you give a specific instance of something that didn't work well and that you improved on afterwards?
That's a different
like, are you talking about like line quality or like the way movement goes, or color, like when you're talking about something that didn't specifically work, what do you mean?
I suppose more in terms of how it looks. So say if I don't know, say I might want to try out a new brush or something in TV Paint, and then, or a new colouring style. So, and then I'll see that it hasn't worked in terms of probably what I don't really like aesthetically, because obviously like it's all kind of subjective, isn't it? But obviously just some looks a bit nicer than other kind of styles. So like I usually try and, if I know that it hasn't worked for at least that piece, then I'll not do that again. I'm trying to think of like in terms of an actual film. Well, what yeah, so one I did was this documentary, which was I think it was, yeah, my first paid commission in 2018 to make a short documentary about Lancashire, which is the county I live in. And I think that one, I just did everything, and it was all outlines, and I didn't colour any of it in. Like lots of it was time constraints as well, but also I don't know, it just didn't seem to work as well as the later that year I did a second project, which was actually my second paid commission, but that one was full colour and that worked really well. But that one I it was still like a quite time constraint. Yeah, there was lots of time constraints in that project as well, I suppose, like all animation. But
Yeah.
that one, to kind of get around just the outlines. So I did the outlines, then I colored them, but I didn't actually put like say a black outline around the character. But I just did like the inlines
Oh, okay.
and that kind of thing. So it was colored, but also like it wasn't just a silhouette thing either. So I think that might be an example. I don't know if that's the best example. I can't really like think of one, but like I can tell a lot on my test pieces, like the ones I've done back in the day, aren't as very strong as the ones that I do now.
As it should
Because
be.
I'm like didn't know as much about the medium back then, whereas now I know a lot more about it and its properties, and I know what more might work and what might not look as good as well.
How do you study to improve? Are you like going frame by frame through other rotoscoped animations, or are you just doing, it sounds like you're doing a lot of testing, which is amazing. But are there specific ways to, like in animation, you study by like going to school or getting a mentor and like studying the principles of animation and like character design and things like that? Are there ways to study in rotoscoping?
I'm not sure. I just kind of study off what I've done and try and improve on it that way, like I was saying. But
You should start a course yourself.
maybe I could do. Yeah, like, I mean, sometimes I do try and get online for inspiration, or usually, I don't know, say if I do go to a film festival or watch just other short films online or wherever. Even if they're not rotoscoped, I usually just, I suppose, get other ideas, or maybe just kind of to study animation as a whole, really, and see what is cool and what sort of things I like, I suppose.
I'm curious. You mentioned before, a good place for rotoscoping is when there's like something that's live that also needs a bit of fantasy in it. So say you need to rotoscope like a character wearing like a silly hat that doesn't exist in real life, or like a character that morphs into a bird, for instance. How would you go about that if you don't have like a video reference for it?
Yeah, usually, well, in one film I've done, it wasn't as extreme or exciting as that. There was there needed to be some, like she was in a shop and she was kind of looking through some shelves, so like I kind of use some things as reference points so the actor knows where to go, and then you can kind of draw the things in afterwards. If it's something that the character, yeah, say something like a really weird hat, then I'd kind of, I suppose I'd just like have a reference point in real life, or at least for the bits which the character might interact with, and then everything else can be drawn on. I remember having to do one just to rotoscope, this was like ages ago, some glasses onto someone for some point in this music video that they kind of had to draw on, but this was, the character was kind of zooming in as well, so it was like there was no reference or anything, so I had to just like motion track some glasses in After Effects onto the video and then draw it on that way afterwards, and then obviously remove the thing.
Oh, that's smart, to just motion graphics. That makes total sense. I don't even know why I didn't think of that. So can you take me through, you mentioned a couple projects that you worked on already. Can you take me through some of the highlights of projects you've worked on or things you're proud of?
Yeah, let me find it all list here. I suppose, well, my first one was in 2011, which was a music video. And even though that wasn't like the best thing I've ever done, I think it was like a really good achievement in terms of the time that I had to do it, and the fact that I was still really new to the technique, and also lots of other techniques, like it was quite After Effects heavy as well. So I think that was like a quite good achievement, and it did definitely set me off on this route. And it has still my highest views on YouTube. I had 2K. It's not even that much, but nothing else has ever got that high. And then kind of like after that, lots of tests and other small bits. And then I think in 2016 was another kind of landmark project. Like between like 2011 and 2016 was kind of, obviously I wasn't doing it as much as I have been now in the last, like, say 3 or 4 years. Because I was like, I still do film and experimental film and other stuff. So that kind of, it's not always rotoscope for me, even though it often is, or at least these days. Yeah, so 2016 was another music video, and that was like the first full piece I was proud of since the other music video I made. And this was a kind of mixed media piece, and it was just like the singer's head that was all rotoscoped with outlines for like the length of the song. Yeah, that was a quite big one, because that was, yeah, just a head, the same person singing for between 2 and 3 minutes. So that was, you did get very used to that person's face by the end of that one. But then the background was all like some hand painted stuff, which I scanned in, and loads of other kind of arty techniques. Then yeah, 2018 was when I kind of had paid commissions in specifically rotoscope stuff. But the second one that year I was especially kind of proud of, which actually aired on TV last year.
Oh, wow.
That was a short poetry film, and that was, yeah, it was animating. The poem was about, it was called Cardigan's Corner Shop, and it was about Cardigan as a place in Wales, and it was about this lady having an experience in the shop. So that was a really cool project, and I still like, even though I think I could do better now because that was 2 years ago, I still quite like a lot of how it looks, and like that one I did lots of the backgrounds in a quite more standard way than my usual experimental stuff. So it was kind of like a different project to work on as well. Yeah, and then last year was another short film. It wasn't a paid commission. It was my first, yeah, it was actually my first collaboration piece, which I did with my friend Alan, who's a filmmaker and writer director. And he wrote the script and I did the animation to it. And that one was, yeah, that was, yeah, it got into like this film screening and also into Cardiff Animation Festival, which you spoke to, Lauren.
Yes, that's
awesome.
awesome.
It was the reason I started listening to this podcast altogether. And then I listened to all like the back catalogue ones, and I thought, yeah, this is a really cool podcast. So yeah.
I love that tie-in. That's awesome. Small world.
Yeah, definitely. And then this year, the one which I made in lockdown called Together Fragmented, which has been successful at a couple of film festivals already. So.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think like each one is kind of stronger than the others. But I still really like lots of the elements from each one, I think. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense.
I like different projects.
Well, thank you for taking me through that. So you've done a bunch of commissions. Is there a big market for this niche of rotoscoping? Or like, what would it take to work, I guess, full-time as a rotoscoper?
I suppose if you got on to say like a series or a feature which was using rotoscope. Yeah. But aside from that, it will probably be similar to animation. So things like, say, corporate work and that kind of stuff, along with maybe like arts commissions or funding and that way. But that I obviously kind of want to like work towards, whereas the commercial corporate work is something which I definitely don't want to do.
When you say corporate commercial work, I'm thinking like, I've seen TV commercials where, you know, like a woman is like running and she's like rotoscoped on top of that. I can't think of the brand, but like, is that what you're talking about? Yeah,
I guess so. Unless kind of a company hired me to do it as one of the animators, then I don't think I'd like to sort of, if it was my own idea or something, I wouldn't really like to do that, because I think, I don't know, it never seems to work creatively for me when
Yeah.
when it's in that kind of way. Whereas when it's something which is an art commission, like a couple of the ones I was telling you about, or even my own short film, even if it is a collaborative piece, those ones, like, you're in it from the start and you know what you want to achieve. And I think because like rotoscope is something, I don't know, I feel like not like, yeah, kind of precious over in a way, or like it's my way of expressionism, whereas like it's kind of my way as painting, and I wouldn't really want to do like a painting for someone to give me money unless afterwards. But I wouldn't really like to do that from the start, I suppose, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I feel you definitely. Like it takes a piece of your soul out of it when they're like, here's the exact specs we need, and you
Yeah,
deliver in that, and there's no creative freedom. And if you take
yeah,
creative freedom, you're gonna have to revise it. Like I get that a lot. Yeah. It makes
yeah. But if it's like, yeah, say working for a company as a rotoscope animator, I wouldn't mind that either. But it's just like some kind of middle ground where I'll just be like,
yeah.
no, I'm not touching that kind of project. But it's weird because like in say photography and videography, which are like the other things which I do, like I can do those in that way, but for some reason with animation or rotoscope, I just can't for some reason
You
whenever I
already
get.
said it's your form of creative expression, and I think
Yeah, I guess so.
that's why. So how did you get the commissions that you got? Did people reach out to you? Were you actively applying for things?
Yeah, there was all ones which I applied for, and luckily someone
Oh,
thought,
so
well,
where do you find like a rotoscope project? Is there
oh,
like,
they're not like specific rotoscope ones, so
oh,
they'll just be like arts call outs and that kind of thing.
oh, so
Um,
you'll pitch it as a rotoscope project then?
yeah,
Oh, okay. So they were
and then
just looking for animation in general, and you're like, here's what I envision this project as, and here's my services.
yeah,
Oh, cool.
basically. And then if yeah they like it, then yeah. But I've had like way more rejections, but probably the same as everyone else listening to
Yeah.
this podcast, than actual ones which get like accepted. So yeah.
I think that's awesome that you're like, this is a cool project, but it would be cooler if it was rotoscoped. And here's what I could do. Because like, if somebody wants a creative project and it doesn't say animation in my way, I'm like, next. Versus like, maybe I should just pitch it to them in my style. That's awesome. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, so like I'm thinking of Reddit on because I follow a bunch of animation and animation career subreddits, and there's a lot of people that enjoy rotoscoping and they're just starting out and looking for tips and things. What kind of advice would you give somebody who's like, I love rotoscoping, I found it, I want to get better at it, and maybe make somewhat of a living off of it? What would you tell them to do that they could, be successful for, as they go?
I suppose, like, I know everyone says this kind of thing, but just like genuinely just keep doing it and build up a reel. Say, like in 2011 when I started, and I did like say one or two things and just sent those out because obviously, like at the time when you do things, you think it's good. When years later, you think, well, I can't believe I thought that was good. The stuff I'm doing now is good. And then say in 10 years, I'll probably going to think the stuff I'm doing now is rubbish and that kind of thing. So I genuinely think just like keep building on your stuff, keep analyzing the stuff that you make, and then just really make your own style. And you can be influenced by different things, I think, but I think like making it yours is really important as well. Like building the stuff, get a reel, get feedback, just continue. And even when the rejections do keep flooding in, just kind of, I know you can just still for a bit. I've done that plenty of times, and then like the next week I'll still be back to work and keep trying, I suppose. So I think I wouldn't be where I am today if I just haven't put in any of the hours, or if I've stopped. So just, I suppose, put in the hours and keep on
Totally.
doing it, I suppose. Yeah.
I'm just curious. So obviously the pandemic has changed everything for everybody, but do you have like a strategy for the next little while on how to do more commissioned rotoscoping or more rotoscoping projects? Like you said, you just did a collaboration for the first time and you've been doing a lot of tests. So do you have like a plan, I guess? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm working on another short film at the moment, which isn't a commissioned or anything. It's just another kind of weird personal thing. But that, like, I think it's more, I still keep applying to any like other commission things if it sounds like a project which I have an idea for, or that might suit rotoscoping. But I suppose like just trying to get work which is kind of either photography or something, and another kind of creative thing, because if the project's not right for rotoscoping, then I won't want to do it, as I said. So yeah, I suppose if something really right comes in and I get it, then obviously, yeah, I'll work on that. But I think like some of the funding over here has stopped for the moment because of COVID. So it's a bit like I was, working, like I told you before, that I was working on a project with some friends, which was a collaborative short film, which will be rotoscoped. But that's kind of, on hold for the moment, partly because of COVID and partly because it's kind of a bit longer than it was going to be originally. But I think we will go back to it like next year or something, when like it's, when everything started up a bit more, or hopefully anyway, like we don't really know what's happening. So yeah.
Well, that's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that when it comes out. I think it's funny that it's blown up to be bigger than it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts on like somebody who's listening to this and doesn't know much about rotoscoping? This is kind of their first listen to somebody who does it, or somebody who's listening and does it and they want to hear more about it. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts?
I don't think so. I definitely tell everyone to watch Waking Life. And also just practice, really. Trying to think if I've got like a really kind of cool piece of information. I think I've like said most of the things I know. I don't know, something I haven't said is also just back to kind of my process. I usually kind of take one line and then do that for however many frames you need. So I don't draw like the whole, so if it's a person standing up, I'm not going to draw the whole person and move on to the next frame. Like, suppose going back to where you saying keep, like, how do I keep it consistent? I should have actually said this then. So say like the shoulder, then I'll just draw like that line and then do that as many times until that shot's ended, and then like go backwards and do another line. So
I do that in cleanup as well. Like if I have a character who's like, moving their whole body, I'll just draw like the thumb of every frame. I'll just go through and make sure that thumb is the same. So that is a good tip. That's something I learned to do as well. And I'm glad you said that, because it's something that mimics what I do. So that's cool. Well,
I don't know if that will be like the same in traditional animation or not, but yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's just what I do. I haven't heard of other people doing this, but I think that's cool. That's neat. Well, thank you so much for coming on the chat. It was really interesting to hear your inspirations and your process. And basically, I just asked every question I had about rotoscoping that I didn't know. So this is very informative for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me as well. And I really hope that this has kind of been of some use or some interest to some.
I think it's great. And if you're listening, you'd like to get in touch with Flora or check out her beautiful work, you can do so by heading on over to her site, which is Flora Martyr. Martyr, sorry. Flora Martyr, floramartyr.com or ..dash.com. I've included those links in the description of this chat, as well as all the films like Waking Life that she mentioned as well. So please check those out, and thanks so much for listening. Okay, bye.